your flesh and blood.
Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, new paradigms for a new world where we're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here 9 times a week, Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and Monday through Friday from 8 to 9 a.m., streaming live at all those times at richarddugan.com. We are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, as well as YouTube, where you can watch these conversations. I hope that you will take time to subscribe and click notifications so that when a new conversation is posted, you'll be notified and you'll be able to tune in, listen in, and learn, be entertained and inspired. A reminder that Choices, which is my book, 5 Steps for Life, it's available on Amazon.com in paperback, hardcover, and Kindle with Audible, soon to be released. We also ask that if you can support the work that we are doing financially, we do have a PayPal account. It is there for your security as well as ours. And when they ask for an email address to whom you're sending, please go to richard@richarddugan.com. That's the email address. If you go to richarddugan.com, there is also a link directly to PayPal so that you can send us whatever support you can. And we thank you to those who have helped and to those who will help. We also ask that you take time during this decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, to go within to that quiet, peaceful, calm, still place and listen to that still, small voice. And with that, we now take you to our very special interview and guest here on Tell Me Your Story. And welcome to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, and we have a very special guest who has not been on this program. Are you kidding me, kids? We had him on our program back in October of 2007 at the early part of Tell Me Your Story. That's right, Richard Unger. I know you're shocked.
Up in my chair. Oh my God.
That's right. It's been that hands on cheeks, waggling head. And I was fascinated because I have a dear friend. She has since unfortunately passed away, but she was very involved in the whole aspect. She dove into face reading. She dove into iridology, all of the different, I don't know if they're sciences today, but studies, if you will, on how to learn about ourselves. And you do the same thing because you deal in the area of not handwriting analysis, hand analysis. And if I am correct, it's sort of the next level of, if you will, palmistry. Is that a fair assessment? And first of all, welcome back after such a long stint away.
Yeah, I come and visit every 18 years, like a long lost cousin.
There you go.
That's fair enough. In the Western world, not the Eastern world, hand reading is at best a sideshow. It is relegated to the carnival. It's not taken seriously, not worthy of serious attention, blah, blah, blah. And so any way of talking about it, as long as you're talking about it, is fine with me. I have no trouble when people call me a palm reader because I know what I do when I look at somebody's palm. But the general reference is fortune telling at the carnival, and people make stuff up and tell you things, and sometimes they try to, steal from you if you're gullible enough. That's an incredible obstacle to overcome in my career. On the other hand, if you're in a small village in northern India, if you're in Vietnam, Laos, the southern part of China, if you're et cetera, the person in the town who is the psychiatrist in charge of herbal remedies person, the one in town who's the wise elder that people come to for advice and for disputes, that guy probably reads hands as part of what he does. And that's, if he doesn't, he's deficient in his studies for not knowing that stuff. Different world.
Yeah. Well, you have a book that's been out for at least 18 years, 19 years,
Since
Life Print.
2007.
2000. Okay, well, there you go. I can't believe
I was
18 years
probably on
ago.
my speaking tour talking to you.
Yeah. And we had a lot of fun. And that was then on the telephone. We've come a
What
long.
is that? Oh yeah, telephone.
Yeah.
I remember.
We did not have smartphones yet, but we did have cell phones.
Yeah.
And it was a fascinating time. Now, this has to do, folks, with deciphering your life's purpose from your fingerprints. And I was fascinated as I was listening to that interview again just recently, in terms of our conversation. And first of all, are we specifically focused on the fingerprints, or are we talking more about from the wrist up to the
Okay.
fingertips?
From the wrist up is my territory. And
Okay.
the 2007 book, Life Prints, is specifically about fingerprints. I have since finished a 3-volume set of textbooks that totals 3,000 pages, which is a university level training program, 3-year training program on the entirety of hand analysis, which is a much bigger world than
Mm,
fingerprints. But I picked something smaller and juicier, I felt, as a starting point. By the way, let me put in a plug for myself. Uh,
please.
that book has sold well over 15,000 copies and is still in sales worldwide today. That's pretty good for a book on metaphysics because it's a book about finding meaning in life.
Now,
And
you also have I guess it's a workbook, and I don't know if this is connected to what you were just referring to, this 3,000 page tome, Life Purpose Now. It's
no,
in your fingerprints.
no, that's one of the teachers,
Hmm.
uh, my system, who studied with me and my wife years ago. I'm still in touch with Rennell, and Rennell wrote a wonderful book on fingerprints. It's a parallel to life prints. It's also about fingerprints. It's not about the entirety of hand analysis. My field has suffered from the absence of any textbook. Anybody who wanted to learn how to read hands and didn't and wasn't lucky enough to have an uncle or a grandmother who was passing it down from, generations prior. If you couldn't find anybody to do that for you, you went and got books. That's what I did starting back in 1969. You go back and get books. The best book on the subject then, and still in wide circulation today, was
Hmm.
written in the 1890s and is 600 plus pages. And first of all, is very out of date. Secondly, half of it is not true. Worse, doesn't include fingerprints. Fingerprints weren't the thing yet in the Western world in the
Hmm.
1890s. That came just a little bit later. And 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 how are you supposed to learn this? There's no textbook
Yeah.
in the field. For the last 25 years, I've been writing that textbook because that's what I want to leave behind when I leave the planet. People can learn how to do this. It is entirely learnable. There are things to be able to observe. There are things to know, how to put things together, how to understand what people are saying in context with what you could see in their hands, how to talk to people about stuff. Again, no textbook in the field
Hmm.
uh, have sought to rectify that.
So get one other area out of the way also. Are we also only speaking of the palm side of the hand, or I know this subject like the back of my hand?
Okay. That textbook from the 1890s does talk about the color and texture of the hair on the back of the hand. There are other hand readers who use some things from the back, but I haven't found it really useful. And there's plenty of information on the front. I use the front. I don't use
Hmm.
the back.
Okay.
And I use hand-shaped lines and fingerprints. So that's 3 completely different systems. The fingerprints, everybody knows you cannot change them. And the book Life Prints was all about the coded information in your fingerprints about where you can find the greatest sense of meaning in life. It's not a normal map. It's a where my meaning can be found map. And if you talk to various scientists, various psychiatrists, They will claim that there is no meaning to life other than what people invent just for their own amusement or to give them some uh, reason to do things, but it's pure invention. I don't believe it's pure invention at all, and I'm glad to talk to you more about it. But the other two systems, the lines and the hand shapes, are changeable over time. In other words, you have a terrible life, everything wrong. You lose all your money. Your 11 different wives run away from you. Your dog runs away from you. Everything goes wrong. Your hand is going to look different than living a fine life with, some ups and downs, but things go well. Hands look different according to what happens, but that information is in the lines and the hand shape. So I have one map that cannot alter and has been the same from 5 months before you were born. That's your fingerprints.
Hmm.
Two other maps that keep changing with time. And it's a comparison between the two that helps me put the picture together about what's going on. What I can see is I could see what your best life can be. I do not know whether you're living it. I can guess, but I don't know. But I can describe it in pretty good detail. If you're not in that life, I can make a bullet point list of what happened to get you out of it. And if we look at that bullet point list of the hazards that steer you away, and you go, oh, yeah, this happened and that happened. Well, that's also a prescription of how to get you back into that best life that I'm seeing in your fingerprints.
Hmm. Okay, now we'll do a little more fine tuning as we move in. Which hand are we using, left or right, or is it left and right? And
The
what's the
latter.
difference?
The latter. Not that much. Various palmistry books, especially from the 1800s, um, make a big fuss about that. Into the first part of the 20th century, the writers did. Um, I'm a new hand reader back in 1969. I'm buying books. I'm reading hands in the snack bar instead of taking my class time. If I had known I was actually preparing for my future occupation, I might have had a different feel for what I was
Hmm.
doing. I thought I was sneaking away from my responsibilities to read
Hmm.
hands.
Yeah.
But, in general, not exactly, but close enough. In general, the left hand is you when you're not expecting company, and the right hand is you when you were expecting company. So they're both you, and one is
Hmm.
fixed up a little for presentation.
Interesting.
So
Now,
the messier stuff,
uh-huh.
uh, if your heart line is a bit messy on your right hand, it'll probably be messier on your left hand. And because it's messier, it's easier to see what the stress markers are because
Hmm.
they're more blown up, if you will, and exaggerated.
Right. Now, I'm just out of curiosity, my putting my hand up, are you actually able to see anything in there
Oh,
that tells you anything?
we could take the rest of
And
our
by the way,
time
this is
to
my
talk
right
about you.
hand.
Yeah, I could. You want to hear a little bit about you?
Sure.
Okay. So you have a square palm, low set thumb, extended little finger with a slight turn on the top. Turn it around, see if I'm right. Square palm,
Hmm.
thumb
Okay.
exiting close to the wrist. That's a low set thumb. A
Hmm.
lot of thumbs exit up over here, much
Ah,
higher,
okay.
closer to the fingers. And your little finger comes up above the line that separates the upper third of your ring finger. Put your fingers together, put them down on the table, and then raise your hand so that the fingers are a flat plane.
Okay.
Take a look at your little finger, turn it
Hmm.
around. It extends above the line that separates the upper third of the ring finger.
Okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And yours extends almost a quarter of an inch above that line.
That's pretty close. Yeah, as far as I can tell.
Yeah. So average is up to the line, but not above it.
Okay.
So that's
Now,
very big.
and in what way?
Well, I'm going to tell you what it means, but it's
Please.
physiologically, that's enormous. That's as if like your nose were, 20% bigger and all the kids in elementary school made fun of you for your gigantic nose. That's a
Hmm.
gigantic difference. So any hand reader who's used to looking at hands all the time, they go, oh, look at that. That's a really big. And the palmistry name for that is the mercury finger. So if you look, you'll see that mine is the same.
Ah, okay. All right. I
You and
see
I are Mercurians.
Mercurians. Mercurians.
So the hand people have been reading hands for as long as there's records of people doing things, there's records of people reading hands.
Hmm.
How far back it goes, it goes back before recorded history. Okay. And back then, most people didn't read or write. Writing is only a few thousand years old. They were
Right.
already reading hands
Hmm.
before they're writing about stuff. And but people knew, we go back into the Greek and Roman era, people knew the names of the gods and goddesses. And so parts of the hands retain the nomenclature from back then. This is the Mercury finger, named after the god with the little wings on his feet. So you have a tall Mercury finger, and tall Mercury fingered people are super curious. They're quick, sharp, and clever. Their mind is seeing the connection between things. Aha, if this, then that means, well, that would mean that. But here, let me ask you about this. So, wouldn't Sherlock Holmes be an example of somebody with a long Mercury finger? Absolutely.
Hmm.
Right. So, on a rectangular hand, which you don't have, you have a square hand. On a rectangular hand, the Mercurian is like this. On a hand that's more rounded, the Mercurian is like that.
Hmm.
On the hand with a different type of thumb, a Mercurian is like this. Okay, you have a square hand with a low set thumb. Square palm people are earthy, practical, down to earth, solid. Their word is their bond. They believe in doing things the right way just because, well, there's honor in doing things that if it's going to be done, it should be done right. That's all there is to it. Forget Democrat, Republican. If everybody was honorable,
Hmm.
that would solve everything.
It would.
Right. That's what a square palm person is like, and they
Okay.
to adhere to that in whatever way suits them and the culture within which they live.
Hmm.
So a square palm, I'm not talking about your thumb yet. The square palm with the long mercury finger is a particular archetype that I call just plain smart. So I have nicknames for about 100 and change archetypes where if you left a handprint on a cave wall 1,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago, 30,000 years ago, because there are caves with handprints on the
Yeah,
wall
there are. Uh-huh.
still extant. I could see if you left your handprint on that cave wall, I would know what type you are. You're the just plain smart. The just plain smart type has a essentialistic intelligence. The way they arrive in an arena of operation is to take it in and get right to the heart of things.
Hmm.
It doesn't take a million layers to get there. They get there in an essential moment. There's good news and bad news for every archetype. At their best, it represents an intelligence that is not bogged down with like large vocabularies with a million words and a complex thing. No, it's to the point precision thinking in a clear way. A desert at dawn is what I say when I'm teaching classes about your archetype. It has the clarity of a desert at dawn. That's the good news. Bad news possibility. Again, every archetype has bullet point lists for good news and bad news,
Hmm.
just each type. If you and your brethren get distorted by life. Your mommy shot your daddy as you held the gun. Who knows what psychological problems have infiltrated your life and caused you, everybody picked on you because of your big nose. Who knows what happened during your life that your psychology got warped? Maybe 1% at first, but then 22% by the time you were an adult. Everybody is warped a percent or two, let's say.
Hmm.
But if you get psychologically damaged, and you have that hand shape. You cannot admit new information in. You believe you're right regardless of what the facts are, and you impose your rightness on everybody around you because, well, you know what's so because you know what's so, so shut up.
Yeah.
That's
You
an
know,
interesting type.
yeah, one of the phrases that I use, and I never, first of all, I have never made the statement that I am right or that my perspective is the right perspective. I always reference what I'm talking about on this program as those are my observations. I'm not putting them on anyone. They are just my observations. You can take them or leave them. But
Right.
this
So
is the
that's
way
the
I see
advancement. Oh,
things right
excuse me.
now.
I jumped in too soon. Excuse
No,
me.
no, that's fine.
No, so that's this archetype
Yeah.
behaving properly.
Yeah. And that's
By
one
the
of
way,
the
people with this archetype
Mhm.
gotten through law school with minimum studying.
Wow.
They read the books,
Yeah.
but they didn't have to work 8 hours a day to study because they figured out the essential story. I read for a guy who had your hand shape,
Hmm.
and I was telling him about it. He said, "Well, that's how I got through law school." I said, "Well, tell me more." And he said, "Well, after the first semester, I figured out that there's only three key things that I needed to know. Every law question, no matter how complicated, came down to three things. I nailed those three. I researched, nailed those three. And then I barely had to study for the rest of the 2.5 years."
Wow, that's very cool. Richard Unger's my guest here on the program. His website is handanalysis.net. Now, there's a throwback to the late 1990s and early 2000s. I used to have a .net. But anyway, it's handanalysis.net. We'll be giving you more information as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan along with Richard Unger, and yes, we are a pair here on the program, and we're glad that you are with us to find out more. I find these kinds of analytic types of not just the programs but processes that you are involved in fascinating because obviously you can focus on a particular body part, like I mentioned earlier about iridology dealing with the iris,
Right,
or face analysis. My friend Ramona Richards, I had a program with her early on in this program, this series of programs called Tell Me Your Story, where we talked about the different shapes and sizes and so on and so forth that
right.
showed certain personality traits. And then there's body language. And the thought that occurred to me was it's like, okay, so let's just say you dive into these different arenas and you do some research and now you're able to read people. And I'm thinking, where's the fun in getting to know someone if you already know all of this stuff? You know what I'm saying? It's like part of the joy of a relationship is learning about the other person. And not looking, "Hey, let me see your palms. Let me look in your eyes and see, who you really are, your personality, and so on and so forth." Instead of, I've heard it said that you will learn more about an individual by playing a game with them for 1 hour than you will in any other way. Because their true self. I mean, I've seen people, and even I, when my best friend, a good friend of mine, and I were playing Monopoly. I was a teenager at the time, and I went over to his place, and we were playing Monopoly. This was marathon Monopoly. I mean, hours and hours. Oh, and our personalities were shooting out all over the place. Fascinating stuff.
Mhm.
Tell us once again, but aside from the website, handanalysis.net, tell us again about this book that I would venture is available for folks if they were curious and wanted to know more about this particular ology, if you will.
Yeah. So they shouldn't buy the book without talking to me first.
Oh,
I
then
need,
get in touch with you.
yeah, Richard at lifeprints.com. So
Okay.
um, uh, they need to talk to me. So I need to make sure that the book fits what they're trying to accomplish.
Mm,
Uh, I have a 3-year training program. When I started to read hands, I looked around for schools. Now that I'm interested, now that I'm reading books, is there a place to learn more? Is there some expert who has courses? Is there a
mhm,
school for this? There was none in the United States at that time.
mhm.
So I started one. We just had our 40th birthday party in March. And
Wonderful.
um, we have a 3-year training program that I've now replicated in book and workbook form. And the book is designed, the textbook is designed uh, for not just reading the information, but there are um, exercises to be done that take you time to do. Read X number of more hands and look at this, this, and this. And then here is the essay questions to give you things to think about regarding these new things that you've been trying to do with the last 20 hands you've looked at. It is a combination of textbook plus workbook, and the course is designed to take time. As you evolve your opinion of how people behave and why they do what they do, and as you learn about yourself in the process thereof, the hand readings that you're doing 100 hands after you started are very different than your understanding of yourself coming in. That's not for everybody to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to find out from a person if this is the right material for them to be doing, or should they take an introductory course with, with Rennell, who wrote that book that you just mentioned earlier,
Mm-hmm.
Life Purpose Now, and maybe that's a better direction
Mm-hmm.
for the person. I'll steer them either way, depending upon what they tell me.
All right, that email address, folks, is richard@lifeprince.com. Okay, that's an email address. That's not a web address. That's richard@lifeprince.com. The web address is handanalysis.net, and we hope that you will investigate that, as we always encourage. The description that you gave in terms of my archetype, I also use the analogy because we talk about giving people choices and knowledge of those choices. And I've written a book called Choices, 5 Steps for Life. And one of the analogies that I use in making a choice, let alone making a decision of any kind, is imagine that there's an event happening and there's a circle around that event. It doesn't matter what the event is. My recommendation is, and the circle's made up of points, stand on one point and observe for a few moments, and then move to another point, and another point, and another point, until, if possible, you can get all the way around that circle. You now have a broader perspective of that event, of what's going on there. The old phrase that if there's a car wreck, not an accident, but a car wreck, and you interview 10 people, you're going to get 10 different descriptions. All right. So you take those 10 descriptions, and now you're able to better evaluate. It's one of the downsides you talked about earlier about the pros and the cons in this regard of the archetypes. Well, there are pros and cons about viewing an event initially, whether it's a car wreck, whether it, just for the sake of argument, whether it was 9/11 or whatever other events, or even if you were watching television on January 6th, 2017. Everybody is going to have their different perspective based upon all of those filters. And
Right.
we sometimes will start watching an event and we will make a decision right away. We will pass judgment. And yet there's very little information. Better case in point are wildfires here in California. And as soon as someone sees the smoke, they want to know everything. Well, there's nothing to know. You know more than anybody else because you see the smoke. We don't know what's on fire. We don't know how it started. We don't know the spread rate, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all those other parameters. It's not until we start to gather the information, which takes time, and people are very impatient, especially these days, that you are able to understand better, oh, okay, no, it was not started by a couple of guys trying to weld a fence on a ranch and a spark got away from them and they didn't have any water to put it out, which is one way that one of the fires down here in Santa Barbara County started 18 years ago, the Zaka fire. Or maybe it was a dry lightning strike. We don't know until we're able to get in and investigate the area. And that, to me, is one of the biggest and sort of saddest aspects in our society today is everybody wants to know immediately what's going on. It's like, calm down, relax a little bit. Let's deal with the event as it's happening. Let's put out the fire. Let's move the rubble. Let's clear this. Let's do what. And then when we get more information, that's why when I saw the pictures on television at, I think it was 5:30 in the morning of September 11th, 2001, and I'm going, Wow, Hollywood is really, that's incredible. The pictures I didn't think it was real. And in this day and age, here we are, 2025, Richard, I actually have to make that statement about anything that I am not physically present to see. Okay? I wasn't on the steps of the Capitol on January 6, 2017. So it didn't happen because I wasn't there to see it. That's where we are today. In the minds of many people, they
Good point. Yeah,
just
good point.
accept what's happening, and I think that's part of the archetypes that you deal with when you do the hand analysis on people.
Well, yes and no. So you make a good point. And I've got many anecdotes that would be similar to what you're talking about. I'll
Mhm.
just leave yours out there as is. But I tell you something in your hands. You come in to see me, and I tell you something in your hands. There's value in the fact that I don't know you at all. And, um, you know, nobody wrote me 20 pages about you. I studied it, and now I'm trying to present it as if I'm reading your hands. No, I'm reading your hands. However, uh, because I say something doesn't mean it's true. If I'm the one getting the reading, I have to come to my own conclusions. And of course, we both have long mercury fingers, and we have to come to, as Sherlock, we read the detective report, but we come to our own conclusion. Thank
Yes.
you.
Hmm.
But there's a test involved. If I am telling you the truth, I tell my clients, if this is real, then the following thing should be observable by you in the next piece of time. You should be able to notice this, this, and that. There will be cause and effect relationships between this and that. If you do this, you should be able to see that happening. If XYZ is happening, you should be able to backtrack and see that ABC was happening just before. So you don't have to believe me. Be observant. And if it doesn't feel right to you next week, fine. Hopefully, we were nice to each other, and the hour and a half passed amicably. But if the algebra that I'm teaching you that's particular to you, if I'm teaching you the cause and effect algebra of events in your life, and then your observation confirms it, then you could use that information to your advantage.
Mm. Now, it's along the same lines, and I've been to mediums. I've been to people who have this intuitive ability, and what have you. And the preface is always the same. This is what I'm connecting with right now. But in the next moment, because everything's in motion, it could change.
Mhm. That's
Where
doesn't matter for hands.
exactly that's kind of where I was going, because the hand doesn't change.
No, the
The
hand does change,
Well,
but
in the sense that the lines and so forth, it's not going to change in the next minute, is what
yes,
I'm
it is.
getting. Oh, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, I'm disagreeing with you, Richard.
I beg your pardon. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fun. Oh,
Does
oh.
it change significantly?
Okay. So I'm talking to you, and you could see my face because this is the Zoom era, not
Right.
the phone era, right?
Right.
Okay. So, does my face ever change during the time I'm looking at you?
Well, yes, it does.
Yes. Now, can you still recognize a picture the minute we started, an hour through? I'm still recognizably me.
Yes.
But I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm delighted, I'm excited, I'm this
Mhm.
and that.
I see.
Uh, my eyes will do
I
this,
see.
my nose will wrinkle, etc. And you can't say for everybody what it means. If one piece of the mouth goes down and the other piece doesn't, that's my face reading student who taught me all about this stuff. But nonetheless, the same thing applies to hands. You're just not used to looking at them. So if you're in my office and I'm reading your hands, which is different than you taking a handprint and sending it to me, which is what I do 80% of the time now.
Mhm.
But if you're in my office right over here and I'm looking at your hands change color, part of the hand at a time, instantaneously on and off. Just like a person's face can turn red if you
Mm.
mention X because it's embarrassing or angry generating, or who knows what, or a part of your hand can turn yellowish, it can turn bluish, and then it could lose that color and be back to pink the next nanosecond later. That's A. Also, as I'm reading for you and I start mentioning who knows what, your relationship with your in-laws, maybe your right thumb moves oh so carefully in, just like this.
Hmm.
And then when I change the topic, it goes back out, and then I'll work my way back to the same topic, and your thumb just moves a little bit that way. It's like all of a sudden, when I mention Bob, you start going like this. I'm
Mm,
exaggerating the gesture, but
mm,
I'm used to looking at subtle gestures in the hand. I was talking to a psychotherapist who worked with very young autistic children, and he would have them draw things and he would have them play with Legos and things like that. His normal way of talking to an adult and taking notes like he usually did, that didn't work with 5-year-old autistic kids. But he would read them a story and he knew a little bit about hands and he would watch the thumb posture. If the thumb, for instance, moves in somebody's fist, this is a thumb sucking posture. People tend to do this when they're feeling insecure, like, "Oh," like that. So if he's
ah,
reading a story and every time character A shows up, the thumb does one of the thumb sucking postures, he would do it 3 or 4 times in different contexts to make sure it wasn't just because it was cold in the room or who knows what. But if it kept on happening repeatedly, he was getting information. Now, he was working and having to file a report with the state. He's a licensed clinician and stuff. He didn't put in that he was looking at their hands and watching what the hands did because, after all, he's a professional. He didn't want to reveal that. But nonetheless, the hand changes moment by moment, the same way a person's face does. And it's just one, it's just one piece of what I'm looking at when I'm looking at your hands. Just one piece.
okay. And yet there are certain aspects of the hand, the fingerprints themselves, the ridges. Now, those don't actually
They
change over
cannot
time.
change.
They
No, they can't.
cannot change.
Correct.
Does the palm have a similar characteristic in terms of those ridges, or do those change over time, in a matter of speak, due to wear and tear, so to speak?
Yes and no. So the palmar surface has all the lines. You can look at your hand, you could see that there's lines there,
Hmm.
uh, etc. But if you look more closely, those lines are on top of a configuration of fingerprints. Your palm is a fingerprint all by itself.
Hmm.
It has the same what are called dermatoglyphic ridging that the fingertips have. The bottom of your feet as well. There's a ridged surface,
Hmm.
bottom of your feet and your toes. And not only do the fingertips that the FBI takes your fingerprints to see if that's your fingerprints on the murder weapon, not only there, but your entire palmar surface is covered with those type of markings that can be categorized and read and understood in a variety of ways. And by the way, thousands upon thousands, literally thousands upon thousands of articles in medical journals on this topic for disease detection, population studies. They can study the fingerprints of those from this part of Malaysia and that part of Malaysia and track back the inherited pattern to see which island they came from 3,000 years ago, things of this sort. Thousands and thousands of articles. It's a rich topic of study. It's just not particularly well known.
Hmm. Makes me think too of the, if you will, the DNA print when we send our
Yeah.
spittle off to the various
Yeah.
organizations, like I have done, my wife has done, I'm sure you probably have, that helps us to define where we come from the past. And this kind of gives it, as you just described, a little bit. It fine tunes it a little bit more.
Yeah,
You know?
it's interesting. However, the bigger gift of fingerprints, that's all interesting. But the bigger gift of fingerprints is, and as a centerpiece of the book Life Prints and the way I read hands since 1969, is that there's a map in there in your fingerprints of an exalted destiny possibility for you, an exalted possible life for you to be living. And if you're 1 day old and I look at your fingerprints, I could tell mom and pop, your son, if things go well, can become a, let's say, inspirational communicator in the public eye, which is my life purpose printed in my fingerprints. So, inspirational communicator in the public eye. And I'm telling this to Mr. and Mrs. Unger, back when little Richard is 1 day old. But who knows what's going to happen? Who
Yeah.
knows anything about what's going to happen? But if I'm living my best life, if I have a sense of kachunk, I'm where I need to be and I'm dedicated to this path, here I am, I've arrived, this is it, then it's going to look like what I just said one way or another. This has been not only my experience, it's Rennell's experience, who wrote that book. At this point, over 1 million people have had their fingerprints analyzed using the system that I wrote about in LifePrints. And, there are umpteen practitioners using it, and it works each time. You're either living a life that looks like the picture in your fingerprints, or you're living some version of its opposite, and you have various frustrations that could be listed. I could be listing Richard
Mm-hmm.
Dugan's. If he's not living his right life, here's the stuff that got in his way. And by looking at that list, that also, if you're frustrated and not living your right life, that bullet point list from 1 day old tells you what needs to happen for you to get to your right life. It doesn't tell you which street corner to stand on or what's going to happen if you make this phone call or if you roll the dice. It doesn't say any of that. It just has a picture of an exalted destiny possibility for you. But that's powerful, Ben,
Yeah.
powerful medicine.
Absolutely. Richard Unger, my guest. And I'll give you that email address again, folks, if you'd like to get in touch with Richard. Richard at lifeprints.com. The website for you to go to is handanalysis.net, handanalysis.net. And I guess I'm going to ask this, even though the book is 18, 19 years old. Pardon me. Um, is it available in Audible form, or does that work for the book?
Yeah, it is, and it's on Amazon, etc.
Wonderful. I'm Richard Dugan, and this is Tell Me Your Story. We're continuing our conversation with Richard Unger, hand analyst. Richard
Can
at,
I ask you a question? Can I
yeah,
jump in and ask
please
you?
go right ahead.
You said conversation, so I want to go back and forth.
Oh, please, absolutely.
By the way, we were having fun before we started recording.
Yes, we did. Yes, we did. By
Yeah,
the way, I love the town you live in. I love the name. It's just, when it comes out of my mouth, I just love the way it sounds. Sausalito.
yeah. I moved here a little over 40 years ago, and I came out here um, from Texas. I was living in Texas. I came out to do a couple of workshops. I got invited to do that. And I immediately fell in love with this part of the world.
Mm,
And I was looking for a place to start my school that I mentioned before. We're going to have a school for this stuff. And
that's cool. That's cool.
decided that Texas wasn't the right place, but California was at that time.
Hmm.
Um, so somebody was leaving for a year to go back to Ireland to be with his ailing folks.
Ah,
And my wife and I rented a little house on 4th Street in Sausalito for while he was gone. I've since lived in several different houses. That house is 100 yards this way up the hill.
mm,
I'm back on the same street that I moved to 40 plus years ago. I've come full
wow.
circle in that regard. I wanted to ask you something.
Yes, I was going to say, please, you had a question.
Standing here, standing here, standing here, standing here, standing here.
Hmm.
Okay. Are you familiar with the family constellation work?
I've actually interviewed someone who talked about that. A fascinating work that they do. But I would love for you to, from your perspective, share with us what family constellation work is.
Well, to preface this, uh, up until just before the pandemic, um, I had been going out for 9 weeks a year teaching hands and reading hands in a couple of clinics in Zurich and the nearby area of Zurich. And so one of the things that Zurich, by the way, is a hotbed of psychological studies and has been for the last 100 years.
Mm.
Vienna, Zurich in the 1930s, the famous psychiatrists of the era had their little clubs and debated who was right, Adlerian this and Jungian that. As a matter of fact, my office in Zurich was across the street from Jung's office. Uh,
Wow.
Although he wasn't there anymore,
Right.
but nonetheless, he hovered in the airwaves over the area. Anyway, one of the things that everybody has done, it's super popular in Zurich and other places in
Hmm.
Germany, for instance, is family constellation work. And um, and I've done it. It's a very powerful thing. So one example. So you're it, and there are 20 other people in the workshop. And now you have a piece of cardboard and um, you write down your mom's name, your dad's name, and any brothers and sisters' name or any significant people in your life. And then the leader of the workshop, usually a therapist, asks you to place that placard down on the ground at any spot around you in this room. And you place maybe your parents' names right here and your Uncle Fred out there someplace. Okay. And then we get random people in the workshop to stand on those squares. And you start to talk about your life. Well, we grew up in, by the way, I'm sorry, where did you say you grew up? You grew up
Born and raised Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, exactly, Phoenix. You start talking, and then the workshop leader will stop. And then they'll call on, okay, Bob. And Bob is standing on the square that says father. What do you see? What do you feel? What are you noticing? And Bob, who doesn't know you at all, he just met you this second,
Hmm.
say, well, feel kind of, I don't know, I feel kind of squeezed in by my circle. Maybe my circle, I don't know. I don't feel free. Mary, you're in the mom's. What are you noticing? I'm noticing that Bob's discomfort is radiating over here, and people will start talking about your life, and you're turning all sorts of purple as you hear your life being told you by people who have no right to know anything. All they're doing is standing on some silly piece of cardboard. I'm exaggerating slightly to make a longer story shorter, but it's remarkably revelatory. I learned a ton when I did it, and I'm still reverberating 30 years after the fact from the recognition of family patterns that were in play that I knew, but I didn't know. But when it was spoken, I knew it. And um, so that's, yeah,
That to me is fascinating because it ties into several things that I've been involved in over the years. Something I learned about that sort of ties into this, at least in terms of the intuitive aspects, is a method that was referred to back when I learned it in the 80s. By the way, I'm 65 in June, so I've been around. I've been around a while. It was called muscle testing, but
sure,
most people know it by the word kinesiology.
sure.
And one of the first ways was you'd lean against a wall and you'd push and you'd push and you'd push. And then you'd step away from the wall and you'd ask a question. And if the answer was no, your arm would stay down by your side. And if the answer was yes, your arm, and it was weird. The arm would raise. You weren't doing anything. And then, of course, there's the old, finger loops, thumb and index looped into the other thumb and index,
Yeah,
and the same
there's
thing.
multiple ways
Yeah,
to do muscle testing.
but you
So
get,
out in, oh,
yeah.
excuse me, you go.
I was just going to say, so you eventually get to a point where you don't need to use those physical aspects. You're listening on the inside of you.
Yeah.
You get the answers that way.
So periodically on my Swiss trips, I would teach a course at a kinesiology school in
Mhm.
Bern, the lovely capital of Switzerland. So a bunch of my students out there and some of the teachers I trained out there were kinesiologists. were professional family constellation work people, et cetera, like this. So one of the wonderful advantages of working in Switzerland, a lovely country, by the way,
Hmm.
um, was that collaborative workshops, residential workshops are more common. In other words, myself and two other therapists who have a different background would gather up 15 people, let's say, for a week's residential out in the countryside, where everybody would have their room or they would stay with a group bedroom, and the meals were all part of the facility.
Hmm.
And for a week, we're working on a specified issue from three different therapeutic perspectives, myself doing the hand stuff. So we would do these different activities during the day. We'd give the participants homework to do, some journaling to do based upon what happened. And then myself and the other two leaders of the workshop would be brainstorming. Okay, what are we going to do about Richard Dugan? Oh my word, what do we, and then we each have different perspectives on
Hmm.
what Dugan's good news and bad news possibilities and how he's navigating his terrain. And do we think this? And I got so much out of those collaborative exercises.
Hmm.
Plus, as did the other therapists listening to me. And then the participants got to play with um, um, it's the uh, multiple perspective approach had super advantages for the people in the workshop. They didn't have to walk a straight line where they were going. They could ziggy zaggy their way with multiple options along the way. I love that stuff.
Well, I've been through a number of personal growth programs, starting with LifeSpring back in
Ah,
1980. One of the interesting observations that I made was, as I'm sitting there, the thought which was not verbalized was, when are these people gonna get it? And the immediately after that thought was the next thought of, you do realize you're in the same room with them, don't you? In other, when am I gonna get it?
yeah.
And I had a conversation at the age of 33 with my brother, my younger brother. We were at a family reunion out in at the Elks Lodge in I think it was Florence, Arizona, or between Florence and Coolidge, Arizona. And we were out there walking in the desert, and I was chatting with him about, hey, here's where I'm from, here's what I'm doing, and this and that and the other. So philosophically speaking, and he says, well, Richard, it's about time that you got it. And immediately I piped in with Mike, it's not when you get it, it's that you get it. And those personal growth programs were, and you talked about your experiences and how it still resonates with you 30 years in
Oh,
the
yeah.
present. Those experiences still resonate with me 40 years in the present because it wasn't just LifeSpring and the three levels that they offered.
Mhm.
It was then in the 90s with my first wife. We went through a series of personal growth programs in Phoenix called Delta Vector and Omega Vector. I'm
Mhm.
still trying to get a hold of somebody there to have on the program to talk about these intensives. They were 5 days, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday night, all day Saturday, all day Sunday.
So residential.
It was a residential for the most part. Yes, they actually had their own facility.
Mhm.
And my first wife and I, we rode a bicycle built for two, and that's how we would get to them. And then, of course, when the night was over, we had to bicycle at 1 or 2 in the morning home, which took maybe an hour or so. But anyway, I found those to be so. I don't want to say necessarily liberating, but they certainly were insightful into myself. Because I remember looking around the room during one of those programs in the 90s, and I'm thinking, okay, yeah, I'd like to connect with that person and that person. It was male and female, and it was based upon, I hadn't talked with any of them. It was just a visual.
Mhm.
No, I don't really want to connect with that person and that person. No, no, no.
Mhm.
When the seminar was over 5 days later, The people that I associated with most were the ones that at the beginning I said I didn't really want to associate with. And I was so glad I did. They were wonderful people. And even those that I had said I want to were great too, but there was less of a connection in that regard. But those are the kinds of things that I am finding. Here I am on the verge of the village of Medicare and all of that comes with it. I'm a big person who loves milestones. I'm grateful that I was born in 1960. It made it real easy to figure out, okay, I'll be 10 at 70 and 8 at 20, and so on, and those kinds of things. And I really am intrigued by these different practices, such as, in this case, hand analysis, but all of these different things, but more not so much try to figure out other people, but to figure out myself. Because one of the things that I have learned, and maybe you've observed this in yourself as well, the more that I understand me, the more I understand other people. I understand where they're coming from. Um, you know, we hear every day about road rage. Well, we don't know where that person's mind is at. And until we sit down and talk with that person for just a few moments, I was in a car accident, a non-injury, where the gentleman pulled out of his driveway with his BMW, and I hit him as I was going down the road. And it was, of course, he's at fault because he pulled out without watching the traffic. Well, what I knew was at the end of that event, if you will, I walked up to him with the police officer and his wife standing there, and I made sure that they were there because I wanted them to witness this. I extended my hand and I said, I'm glad that we're both okay. I hope that you will go out and make it a better day the rest of this day than it started out for the two of us. Because, like you, living in a small town, I may, no pun intended, run into this guy again somewhere down the road. And the
Sure.
last thing I need to do is, put up those walls, that people do. And then, of course, then we have a future, I don't know, conflict potentially. You hit me, I hit you. Da, 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 da.
Well, hopefully it's not necessary to stay in conflict, but there's two involved, and you can't control what the other person's going to do.
That's right.
I took a note of a key word that you said just a moment ago,
Hmm.
which is practice. And one of the things that I emphasize when I'm talking to groups, excuse me, is that your life purpose, which is what Life Prints is about, it's revealed in your fingerprints. Your life purpose is not some ultimate arrangement of your life that you get there and now you're done.
Hmm.
Your life purpose is a practice, and it's a practice of paying attention to a part of yourself that if you continually pay attention to that part, it's always there. When
Yeah.
your fingerprints are there, it's always there. But if you can continually redirect your attention to the part of you that your fingerprints represent, ultimately, that practicing becomes the norm. And you're living your life more and more from that part of you, which is when you feel most alive. But that's a daily practice.
Yeah.
Yesterday was yesterday.
Yeah.
Today, I can do that all over again or not, as the
Hmm.
case may be.
Yeah. Uh, in October of 24, I uh, I found this book. It's actually a cassette set of cassettes that I bought in 1990 and I had listened to back then. It's a dramatized version of a book called The Goal by a gentleman by the name of Goldratt, an Israeli author who unfortunately has since passed away because I would have loved to have him on the program. Bottom line of the story, without giving anything away, is the message that I got was just because we've always done it this way, does that mean we always have to? Could there be other ways of doing things? Well, I went to Audible, of which I'm a member of. Well, guess what? It was available, the same dramatization. So I listened to it back in October of 24. and it lit a fire under me to want to do more than what I was doing. And so to me, and that's one of the things you've just stated is one's life purpose today is not necessarily one's life purpose tomorrow. It's sort of an evolutionary process.
I disagree.
Okay.
I disagree. So I said that my life purpose was inspirational communications, to oversimplify it.
Okay.
Okay. So when I'm 15, that looks very different from when I'm 45, which looks very different from when I'm 75. However, inspirational communications stays as the life purpose. So my circumstances change. I evolve. I'm a different guy. But when I do life purpose workshops, which I've been doing for decades,
Hmm.
I ask people at the beginning, what do you perceive your life purpose to be? So people will say, my life purpose is to be a good mommy, be a good daddy. Well, okay, that's nice. If one is a parent, do you aspire to the opposite? Other people will say, my life purpose is to succeed in my business, and they'll talk about their business.
Hmm.
Who would aspire to unsuccess in their, those aren't life purposes, those are goals. And
Okay.
other people will talk about their values. My life purpose is to be a good person at home and in the world and to leave the world better than when I came. Okay, that's good. I'm glad that you feel that way. That's your value. But I'm talking about something printed on your body before you're born that is your soul's contract, I believe, for this lifetime. And when you are practicing living out your soul's contract, if I am right, you judge for yourself, like I said earlier in our talk.
Hmm.
If you're living in compliance with that contract, your life becomes better and better, more meaningful. You become more real. You become more the you that you like yourself becoming. If you start moving in a different direction, well, then there's the absence of that feeling. So people tell me that my purpose was to raise my family, and now I'm 60, and they all left 20, they left the house 20 years ago. I see them, I talk to them, but
Hmm.
they don't want me around all day long, like when they were little kids. Now what am I supposed to do? Or somebody lost their business, or life purpose is bigger than those things that I'm saying. I'm using life purpose with a capital L and a capital P,
Mm.
designating different terrain.
Okay. That makes perfect. It's broader and deeper.
Broader and deeper.
I would say that I could even define mine as to serve. Now that's been epitomized by my boss, who says with our clients, our programmers and advertisers, we're here to serve. And you never say no, but that doesn't mean you always say yes. It says you might have to say, let me look into that. Let me see what I can find out, those kinds of things. But
There
in
are a whole
terms of
series.
being there, go
Oh,
ahead.
excuse me. I
No,
have
go
to.
ahead.
So, pardon me. There are a whole series of service-based life purposes, according to what I've learned in the hands.
Hmm.
And one of the things that they all include, excuse me again, one of the things that they all include, anybody who's studying service in this lifetime is destined
Hmm.
to make service errors. If you are in the school of service, you attempt to do service and yep, you did it, you nailed it. Nope, you didn't. Nope, you didn't. Oh, you nailed it. So servitude, which is perceived service that turns into burdensome obligation and is not fulfilling, where you're carrying somebody's piano uphill in the rain and things are getting worse and worse in your relationship.
Hmm.
That was an attempt at service,
Mm.
but it didn't come from a service place. You thought it was coming from a service part of your psyche, but it came from something else.
Mm.
And being able to discern the difference between what is service and what you thought was, and the outcome trains you to realize that you were coming from a very different place than service without even knowing you were. That's part of the path of service. So if I'm lucky, I'll get to look at your fingerprints and tell you what your fingerprints say.
All right. Well, we'll set that up. I'll figure out how to get those to you.
I send
This.
out a kit. I send out a kit. You take your fingerprints, you send them
Oh,
to me, and I'll do a quick Zoom call or I'll send you an email.
okay. All right. Well, we'll set that up following our conversation here. Matter of fact, our conversation is with Richard Unger. Handanalysis.net is the website if you'd like to get in touch with Richard. Richard at lifeprints.com. Life Prints is also the title of the book, one of the books that he's written. And we encourage you to go to his website as well as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I am really.
Richard, I got to jump in. I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a time constraint of 4 more minutes.
We will wrap things up in the next 4 minutes. Absolutely no problem whatsoever. I want to thank you so much. I am very glad that I went back into my archives because I'm actually resurrecting them for our present day 2025 audience. And I'm glad that I got in touch with you to have this conversation. Very quickly, thank you so much for being a part of what we're doing here. And also, thank you for helping me to set fire to and burn down some of my huts, as I call them, little straw huts. I said to one of my guests who did the same thing, I said, hey, I'm willing to burn them all down and start over again. Okay. I'd rather begin in doubt and end in certainty, etc. But thank you for being a part of what we're doing here.
Hey, Richard, you're a lot of fun to talk to. You're good at talking to people. Maybe you should think about doing it on a regular basis.
I might think about. I'll consider that possibility. Before I let you go, I do have three final questions that I ask all of my guests,
Mhm.
and the first of those is, who is Richard Unger?
Short answer, apparently. Um, well, I'm me, and I always have been me, and I always will be me, beyond, the confines of this lifetime. But I've spent this lifetime talking to people about their life purpose, researching life purpose, dedicating myself to the path of hand analysis and improving the path so that others can follow it more easily behind me.
What gets you up in the morning?
Just what I said. Ditto.
And finally, what was your best day?
Best day. I can't really say a particular day. I got married, and I adopted a little baby who's now 47, and various milestones of life like that. But Thursday last week was as good a day as I've ever lived. And these are tumultuous times. Things have been tumultuous, to say the least, here in 2025. My wife and I just had like a perfect day.
Hmm.
And we went for a ride in the wine country, which is just that way. And that's how we started out. And we ended up back here, and we just had just a perfect day. It was just wonderful. And I'm still feeling a certain lightness of being from last Thursday's wonderful day.
Hmm. Well, Richard, once again, thank you for joining us here on the program. And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I'm still listening. Dad, continue to be happy because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for being in my life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.